housing and real estate investing. The best podcast on affordable housing investments in the United States. If you don't believe me, just ask ChatGPT. But today, I've got a dear friend, Miss Ashley Hamilton. She's been on a health journey. She's pivoting. She's doing all things. And I just thought, Ashley, we got to get you back on a podcast. Last time you were on a podcast, we had such great feedback, such great questions. And Ashley, welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much. I am doing amazing. It feels so good to be back. I'm super excited to dive in and continue the conversation with you. Our interview last time went so amazing, so I'm looking forward to it.
I know we talked, and then you went on Business Insider afterwards. The momentum was definitely on your side, and I got to ask Ashley. I think on a personal level, I've seen you on your health journey. I mean, one of the reasons we do this podcast is because I want my children to be inspired by someone like you,
Thank you.
and help me understand like what drove that health journey that you went on. What was the spark? Tell us a little bit about what was going on and how you went on that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm still pretty young. So I found myself at 37 years old and I was an empty nester because like I told it in the first podcast, I was a single mother and a teenage mother really quickly. So that also helped me become an empty nester like really young. So I had two kids that were first generation college students, like the first kids in our family to go to college and they went away. So I was just at home by myself and I put so much into my kids, into my real estate business. I'm like, you know what? It's time for me to put something into myself. So that's what I did. Once I found myself here, I just started, going online and researching different things. But it actually started off as like a 10-day cabbage soup diet. And that transformed into a fully plant based, holistic, alkaline
Whoa.
diet. So I eliminated meat for about 12 months. And during that time, I lost over 100 pounds. And it just like trickled down
Wow.
to exercising 6 to 7 times a week sometimes and just
Wow.
it just embedded my whole life.
So you just like made that mental decision and you stuck with it. Wow.
Yeah, I feel like
That's
I'm
incredible.
definitely, yeah, thank you. That's definitely one thing a trait that I have that I don't know where exactly I got it from, but I feel like that definitely helped me be successful in real estate. It's just that when I put my mind to it, I do it, you know what I'm saying? But it has to make sense to me. I have to have like everything set up. But as long as I have like a clear foundation and everything set up, I typically can do the hard work, especially if I know it's just temporarily.
Wow. I mean, I'm just so impressed. And working out 6, 7 days a week, I mean, that is almost impossible for some people. But I think that says a lot about you and why you've been able to thrive even in environments and markets where things seem a little uncertain. But you put your mind to it and you make that pivot and you just commit 100% to it. I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
there must have been like a day where you thought about, was there a day like during this whole health journey where you're like, you know what, let me stop, let me take a break? Did those thoughts ever come across your head at all?
Not at all. During the journey, not at all. I knew that there would be a
Let's
maintenance
go.
phase, and then I will be able to, reincorporate things into my diet. So literally, I was like the person that wouldn't even cheat once. I was just so
Let's go.
focused, but mostly because of the work that it took, and like, doing cleanses and stuff like that. I was like, well, if I eat this candy or the sugar, I'll put it back in my body, and then have to do another cleanse, and I didn't want to do that. So that
Oh,
really was what it was. But just really quickly, I know, we have a whole show of stuff that we want to talk about real estate, but I just wanted to say also, as a real estate investor and someone that's always, wanting to continue my wealth, grow my wealth, and let it last for generations, I had got really interested in life insurance, obviously to protect my net worth and to make sure that if something happened to me, especially being overweight, pre-diabetic and stuff, that my kids were able to sustain or at least pay off my debt. So, I didn't pass anything on to them. And I couldn't qualify for quality, life insurance. Yeah, because I was overweight and pre-diabetic and all that stuff. So I remember I found that out like a year or two before. And I just never crossed my mind. But that was another driving factor in this weight loss journey. And 6 months in, now I have life insurance term and
let's
whole life.
go.
And when I went to do the test, it was like, "Oh, your blood pressure is like the blood pressure of an athlete." And I'm like, "What?"
Let's
I never
go.
even worked out before. And yeah, so it was a really amazing feeling to not only like change my life and my health journey, but to think about the things that we don't think about as entrepreneur, or a lot of people take for granted if they just always had good health, but when you're working so hard to be an entrepreneur and the stress and all that stuff, and if you happen to be overweight, you can't even participate in a lot of wealth building strategies and things like that. So that was definitely a driving factor for me to get my like life together, at least so I can qualify for life insurance. So I didn't just, have all this obligations if something happened to me to pass on to my family with nothing to, kind of compensate them or help them out along the way.
That is such a great life lesson. I mean, when I think about just people, sometimes it's very hard for folks to do things for themselves.
Yeah.
They might need someone to do it for. And
Hmm.
you just drop so many different threads for people to pull on so that they can decide, hey, maybe I don't feel like doing it for myself, but maybe I can do this for my kids, especially if you are looking for life insurance. I mean, I really love all the threads that you put out so that people can grab onto them as much as possible and figure out, hey, what am I doing this for? Right? I'm chasing, chances are people when they listen to this podcast, they're chasing financial freedom. They're chasing freedom of time, freedom of choice to do whatever they want, whenever they want. But if you don't have the health, it's going to be so hard to execute on it. And not to even disregard the amount of energy you need to push through those obstacles when they come up. So, actually, this is a perfect segue because now we can talk about like what have you been up to. Now, let me just start really broad. How about just catching people up to speed? Like what we hear about high interest rates. We hear about super hard to get rental increases. We hear about super hard to fill certain units. What are you doing right now? And what are you considering as deals?
Right, absolutely. So I'm still active in the market. I have like 5 renovations going on right now. So it's always crazy. And I hear, all the rumblings about they're hard to get rent increases, the interest rates are going up, the market is slow. We're, maybe entering a recession. But, I don't let that stop me. My goal is just, hey, I'm gonna pivot no matter what, I'm gonna be successful at it. So right now, what I'm doing is I'm converting. So I live in Detroit, obviously, and that's where I invest in, Detroit, Michigan. So right now, I want to give a whole backstory, but I don't want to make it too long. But long story short, before COVID, I was a cash investor where I would only use cash paying tenants to occupy my properties. But once COVID hit, everybody wanted that guaranteed rent. So I completely overhauled my portfolio, and then I started, hosting Section 8 people. But it was not only to, just get the money for it. Obviously, it was also to provide dignity and class and things like that, because even though it was government assistance, even though it's Section 8, I still went over and beyond for my rentals, like putting granite and things like that. But at the time, we had a surplus of over 20,000 applicants that didn't have housing in my area on Section 8, because a lot of people just didn't want to deal with that. So that's when I decided, hey, let me put on my, big girl hat and dive into the Section 8 head on, but do it the right way. Well, again, after COVID hit, and once everybody realized that you can still get your rent from Section 8, I feel like the whole world kind of pivot of investors pivoted to Section 8. So it became more scarce, high demand, more supply, less demand. And over time, it was hard to fill my units, and they were staying on the market a little longer, maybe 30 days. And I was like, you know what? Where's the gap? And I found that in Detroit alone, there's very few 4-bedroom properties. So just doing a little research, we found out that there was over 10,000 voucher holders in my area that were in a 3-bedroom but qualified for a 4-bedroom, or people that were just in really bad situations because they just could not find a 4 or 5 bedroom home. So that's when I was like, cha-ching. And then how can I do that? So I could have went out and tried to buy 4-bedroom homes and renovate them and things like that. But I was like, no, I'm gonna take my own portfolio and make it better and make sure I can service these people. So for the last 2 years, I've been on this journey, and it's basically like maximizing and optimizing my cash flow without buying more doors, right? So bringing in more income. So recently, I've been just adding another legal bedroom, whether it's in the basement or in the attic space, to turn my 3-bedroom, 1.5 bathroom properties to 4 bedrooms, 2 bathroom properties. That in a nutshell.
Wow, I love that strategy. I mean, I can't tell you how many times people have come to me, Ashley, with like, "Hey, should I get rid of this property?" And then you hear about like the great position that they're in, where they
Right.
might have either paid it off completely or they have a very low interest rate on their property. And then
Mhm.
it's almost like, well, why don't you just expand? Like you said, maximize and optimize your cash flow position with the existing properties. So I took a property from 3 bed, 2 bath to 4 bed and just using existing square footage, framing additional room that added like 20, 30 grand in additional ARV after repair value for that property. That allowed me to pull back out all my capital using the burst strategy. Now, actually, I'm sure people are wondering like, wow, okay, adding a legal bedroom, that seems really hard. Sounds like permits and stuff like that. So for
Mhm.
people that are wondering, how much does it cost to add a legal bedroom and how long does it take? Can you help shed some light on that process for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So really quick, I just want to state this. So a legal bedroom, obviously, I took the licensed builders class in Michigan, so I am becoming studying to become a licensed builder. So that really opened up a lot of eyes for me. So the legal bedroom is typically in Michigan, it's like a 7 foot ceiling height and two egress, which is a door and a window, a heating source, and a closet. Technically, you don't even have to have a closet, but obviously, I want to have a closet. So what I'm doing though, so I basically had that, schematic. And then what also plays into fact is that anything above grade typically doesn't count in the square footage. I mean, below grade, I apologize. So in Michigan, we have basements. I know like a lot of places like Florida, they may not have basements, California, but in Michigan, we have basements and they're just basically the same size as the property, but underground level. So it doesn't really help the appraisal as much. Well, at least that's what I thought going in. But my goal was to have a legal bedroom for Section 8. I was literally doing it for Section 8 and to get the rent increase. So reached out to all of the local Section 8 agencies and say, hey, what are your requirements to call, this property a 4 bedroom? Because it is in the basement, it's below grade. And she was like, yeah, well, it may not, count as a 4 bedroom on your square footage or on your, appraisal, but we consider it a 4 bedroom if it has an egress, a door, a heating source, 7 foot ceiling height. So that's what I did in a nutshell. So because it is the basement, it's not really considered a legal fourth bedroom far as to add to my bedroom count. But for Section 8, it recognizes as a 4 bedroom and even cash paying tenants because it's a huge space and it's it's under grade level, but it's finished. So sorry, I know that was a lot. But yeah, so because of that fact, it's costing me about $13,000 to add an extra bedroom in the basement. And the bulk of that cost is going to an egress window, which I have a really good guy here that's charging me about $4,000 to install them. And on average, I would say nationally, it's like between 5 and 7,000. So still not that bad. But once you do that, most of the time the basements are already, there. You just frame up a wall, put some drywall up, and call it a day. So I've been able to change the 3 bedrooms into 4 bedrooms for just about $13,000. But the biggest thing is it's giving me a $200 to $300 rent increase
Wow.
per month. Like, yeah, because the national average for Section 8 around here for a 3 bedroom is about 1,500, but a 4 bedroom is 1,800. So that's number one. We're getting that $300 a month increase for a $13,000 investment. It did give me an appraisal boost. So it was not comping my property against other 4 bedrooms because the bedroom's in the basement, but it did give me a $15,000 increase because now the basement is considered finished. So that did increase the property value because it is finished, a finished basement. But it still says 3 bedrooms, on the appraisal. So that's number two. But number three is what I was going to say. It eliminated the lack of demand space, right? Because now I just open myself up to the floodgate of $10,000 voucher holders that
Yes.
are in a smaller unit because there's nothing available, or they're just waiting and staying at their current property, even though the conditions are deplorable because there's nothing really out there. So that was the biggest boost, the demand. Now where properties will sit on the market 30 to 60 days, they're flying off the shelf with 3 or 4 people that want this place. And not only that, 9 times out of 10, I'll have another unit under construction. So even the people that can't qualify for this or didn't act fast enough for the 4 bedroom that I have listed, I can already shift them to my next one and kind of have some already pre-approved applicants before we even finish the renovation.
Wow, wow, wow. I get so jazzed up when we talk about deals like this because this is so good. People have to understand, okay, now you've understood that this type of renovation, it adds value back. It's not like, hey, when you do a big kitchen renovation, you do it for 100 grand, you only get back like 60 grand in value. That doesn't justify the amount of spend. But now you're
Right.
spending 13 grand to add a legal bedroom, but it adds 15,000 in
Mm-hmm.
appraised value, even though it wasn't even a finished bathroom. I
Yep.
mean, bedroom,
Bedroom.
that increase, you got all the value back. And on
Right.
top of it, you got a huge pool of prospective tenants that have been waiting on the sideline, waiting for a place. So now you can pick from essentially the best of the best tenants from that pool because they've been clamoring, they've been looking for that supply. And I can't not highlight this because you did something that's so important. You went to the housing authorities and you asked them, what of the X amount of voucher holders, right? You said, I think you said there were 10,000 people in 3 bedrooms that were looking for 4 bedrooms.
Mm-hmm.
That is a huge signal of demand. And that's something that you're making up in your head. You got that data and said, okay, the data supports it. This housing authority also supports my potential strategy of turning this into a legal bedroom. Let me now go for it. And now you just got
Absolutely.
significant results. Oh, this is so good.
Absolutely. And the thing is, I made sure I emailed them, like, do you consider this a bedroom first? So that if any, once I created the fourth bedroom, if a tenant applied and they denied them, I can go back to the email with like, hey, I have this. This is the housing agent. You guys emailed me and said this was a bedroom, but so just to cover my tracks. But literally, I've done 5 of them so far, and I've never had an issue, and tenants love them. So again, just wanted to break down the strategy really quick because I know I talked about it. So again, we, like you said, the 10,000 voucher holders that were clamoring because they didn't have the supply. So now we have the increase we have the increased demand. And then also don't forget about the, well, you said the appraisal where I pretty much got my money back, but that was an added bonus that we didn't expect. I put 13 in, I got a $15,000 increase. But don't forget, which the most important thing is the cash flow, to go from 1,500 a month to 1,800 a month. So that $300, and essentially, I didn't buy another property, so I don't have a new mortgage bill. I'm still paying the same taxes, insurance, water bill. So that's pretty much all profit, that extra $300 a month. And we all know that cash flow is the only thing that helps you quit your job because that's the residual income. Obviously, if you're a flipper, you can make the money, but you're going on a job because now you have to find your next project and manage the rehab versus cash flow. It's, if it's done right, it's really passive and it can help you quit your job. So that was a big boost, the $300 a month in increase. And then also the last thing I want to say is still over delivering though, because you could do this. And I'm not saying you, I know your listeners are not these people. We're not the bad landlords on this podcast, especially all the positive feedback I got from the listeners. But you do have to worry about those slumlords to think, hey, I just want to throw a fourth bedroom anywhere possible. And I had a lady who was moving into my place, and they just built a wall in a dining room and added a fourth bedroom. It was just weird. Yeah. So, you may get somebody, but that's not longevity. So still over delivering. Like I still want to give dignity where to the tenants where it's a win-win for everybody. Like, yeah, I just listed all of my wins, but the tenant is winning now because now they have adequate spacing. They have if they have a teenage boy, he has his own like man cave at a young age. And just to see their face light up, right? Still putting LED faucets in the bathroom so that when they, turn the water on, there's a nice little light. And then also like continue with the granite countertops and, finishing the ceilings versus leaving them open. So still over delivering on that. And that's how I feel like me personally is successful because I'm not only just creating a 4 bedroom to fulfill the demand, I'm still, doing it and going over and beyond in my design and still picking high quality materials and over delivering, on the units.
I love the principle of over delivering consistently over time and time again, because that's how you've been able to attract the best tenants and bust down all the myths. Because this is a great kind of conversation because I know we've covered this in the past, actually, but still, I mean, I look at forums like Bigger Pockets, Reddit, and
Mhm.
people are asking questions like, hey, is Section 8 really a thing? Or they might say things like, hey, I bought in a really bad area, so I'm thinking about renting Section 8. But it's almost like the opposite
It's
mindset. It's almost like you take a completely different approach. Like, let me buy in a good neighborhood, put in above average finishes, give people the respect, the dignity, the pride that they love where they're living, to overcome all those myths that were previously associated with Section 8. So maybe, Ashley, could you shed some light? You must have heard some myths about Section 8 housing. Can you share what some of those myths might be about affordable housing and how you've been able to kind of break it down based on your experience with Section 8 housing?
Yes, absolutely. And obviously, the biggest myth is they're going to totally trash your place, right? They're going to totally trash your place. They're going to have unauthorized residents, or they're going to diminish the neighborhood. Your neighbors are going to be mad at you. It's going to be a headache, or more. It's going to be hard to manage. Yeah, you can make the money, but you're going to lose your free time, or because you're always going to be there. And I've been super blessed, but I haven't experienced any of that.
All right. So I love that you busted down that myth. And that's probably because you have such a great screening process to find these folks for your property, right? So shed some light on your screening process. How do you screen for Section 8 tenants? And what might you be doing that's a little different or completely not ordinary based on what people just read out of like a very generic ChatGPT response or question?
Right, absolutely. So definitely screening is the most important thing in the business. You don't want to get, involved in a contract with somebody for long term and have all these nightmares. So number one, we're always looking for current rental references, right? So if you are already renting a place, we want to speak to your current landlord. We just have to make sure we're speaking to the correct landlord, because a lot of people will,
Yes.
use a fake landlord. So I definitely have a little trick on that. Just verifying that the landlord is real. But that's number one. Also, even though, obviously Section 8 is very attractive and a lot of people want to go for the 100% paid, right? So the government pays 100% of the tenant's rent. Well, we don't kind of do that. We want the tenant to have a small portion, typically $400 a month or lower, but at least they're paying something towards the rent. And we feel like that's giving us a better quality of tenant, because everybody knows, like, if you don't pay, you don't pay attention, or if you don't pay, you don't respect the thing. So you want to have skin in the game, just like as an investor and things like that. So by them paying a little amount a month, even if it's $100 a month, I feel like it gives them a little more, pride, or ammunition not to damage the property. So because of that, they have to, qualify. So let's say their portion is $200 a month, then we make sure they have a legitimate income source. And then that's also helpful as well in case they damage the property or they need to pay utilities and things like that. So that's typically the qualifications, making sure that we have a current landlord reference or any kind of reference of them paying a certain amount for 6 months, without any issues. Making sure that they have the income to pay for it. And then, just the walkthrough itself, looking at the tenant, talking to the tenant, figuring out their motivations. But typically you can find a lot of, red flags, in a person if they're going to be negative right off the bat, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I remember. And I love how you mentioned checking on the landlord to make sure it is indeed the landlord, not the best friend's name. We covered that little piece of nugget in our prior podcast. So if you guys want to know what that is, make sure you check out the old episode I did with Ashley. Now, Ashley, this is so good because I loved how you have a different principle. Some people might want 100% paid by the housing because then it decreases the risk, quote unquote.
Yeah.
However, it's very common, just like you said, with that principle, if they don't pay attention. So when you are screening tenants and you find out that they are going to pay a certain portion, are you doing like job checks, like verifications? Like what's sort of that screening process to make sure that you're proving out their income? Or does the housing authority ever do that for you?
Yeah, so that's the good thing about it. The housing authority already does it, but you still want to trust but verify, right? So, yeah, so again, if their portion is $200 a month, I'm just verifying their income source to make sure they make at least $600 a month. So, it could be from a job, it could be from, Social Security, disability, it could be child support or spousal support. So, just collecting that data and then verifying that data. And then also, I just wanted to say that, on paper and even in person, there's bad actors right out there. There's people that, are professional tenants that know how to scam the system or put on a good face for a short period of time just to get the place, and then they get in there and everything changes. I feel like in my 15 years of investing, I can't believe I'm even saying that. But I feel like the biggest thing that well, the biggest problem that I had from tenants in general, mostly cash paying tenants, is them moving family members in that weren't originally on the lease or having an unauthorized
Mm,
pet. Those were the two biggest things that I would find that kind of spiraled the rental down the drain, and kind of I guess damaged it a little more because of more wear and tear, more people, and then also increasing the bills and things like that. And then just the drama of having, people there that don't really respect the place because they're not on the lease. Yeah. So to combat that, especially when I started Section 8, obviously, and you hear all those negative things, that I started to include landscaping in my rent. So, for example,
mm,
I may have a four-bedroom that's listed for $1,800 a month, and we come out and cut the grass every 2 weeks in the summer months. So our season here lasts from April to October. So I, partnered up with a landscaping company and actually kind of, went half and half and bought the equipment, hired them to do all my landscaping at all my Section 8 places. But what that does is it gives me a close, intimate view of the property every 2 weeks, right? So it's very hard for them to have an unauthorized pet because we're cutting the grass. We would notice the holes in the fence or the ground or the yard, or if they have five cars there every time we come, it's just red flags. So I really like that part of the business because now we can still do our annual inspections once a year, but so much can change in that 1 year. So now we have a very close look every 2 weeks. Hey, every time I come over here, there's six cars in the driveway. Hey, we're noticing big holes by the fence. There's possibly a pet here. And I train my landscaping guys, or let them know what we're looking for. Or, hey, every time we come over here, the blinds are all broken and out, or they have toys or garbage on the house. So that has really helped me kind of identify, tenants that are going down the wrong path. But then another thing I do believe in, and I know I'm like going all out, is like coaching and being real with my tenants. So even though we identify it, we don't just say, hey, you're going to get evicted if you don't stop this. I reach out to them. I try to talk to them, like, what's going on? How can we help? Obviously this is a violation of your lease and you don't want to lose your Section 8, but maybe I can provide a couple shelters or a couple resources for your family member to move out. Or maybe I can provide an animal shelter that would take this unauthorized pet because you're not supposed to have it. So we don't step in as like the bad guys, hey, do this or else. We come in with solutions and figure out what's going on and kind of let them know why it's beneficial for them not to do this behavior. Because I keep telling everybody now, I if I was, even if I worked at the big three, one of the auto plants here, I couldn't even afford rent at $1,800 a month. The average, American couldn't afford rent at $1,800 a month in this area, even if they were making $25 an hour, because it's just outrageous on top of all the other expenses you have.
wow.
So I
I
know
mean,
that
I
was a lot.
love that nugget that you just provided to the audience, right? Landscaping is a great way for you to stay on top and get a pulse of your property, especially if you got six cars in a driveway. Huge red flag. But I
Right.
really loved how you handled it. You don't just say, "Hey, I saw six driveways. What's going on here?" Right?
Right.
You ask it from an intention of helping the other person. And when people feel that intention, they don't become as combative in that situation. I mean, that's such a great little nugget. I know one of my close friends, he for his multifamily property, what he would do is every single month they would have someone go in there and change the AC filters, right?
Mm.
That's how he would keep a good pulse inside. Or it's always like a maintenance check, like check on the windows, insect screens, or smoke detectors. There's always some kind of monthly maintenance that the property manager does to go into the unit every single month to make sure that you're keeping a pulse on the entire property. Because I knew one of the big advantages of Section was that there is an annual or biannual inspection that people do. But in 6 months, like just like you said, a lot can happen. A ton
Mhm.
can happen. And I loved how you kind of just handled all these issues. So, I mean, you shared some issues that maybe out of state investors
Mhm.
probably don't know how to handle. Now, when people think about Detroit, sometimes people have this preconception of like what Detroit is based on like the history of Detroit. When does it make sense for people to invest in Detroit? Like, what sort of your position or your experience with investors investing out of state that has had success in Detroit? Like, where are the markets and what should they be looking for in terms of the neighborhood or types of properties that can make them successful now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always say that the time is now, right? It's always been, I've been preaching this since 2019, and it has continued to get better. So number one, just the pricing, the you can get into a nice Section 8 3-bedroom rental here as an investor for less than $100,000 all in. And then the unique space that we're in Detroit, and I still feel like we have still about 5 more years of appreciation still to go, but it's because Detroit was already at the bottom, and with the media attention and just all the amazing things that's going on, there's time. There's this time we're actually getting the cash flow and the equity, excuse me. Sorry about that. So before Detroit, like you can spend, like I was spending $50,000 on a property, and the property was only worth 40 to $50,000. There was no appreciation at all, but I did it for the cash flow because I was still getting, $800 a month in rent. So it was great. But now I'm seeing, okay, I'm still making a cash flow about $500 to $600 a month, but I'm also getting the appreciation boost because Detroit property values are going up. Also, just like you said, so Detroit, even though it's an amazing place, you can be extremely successful here, and there's new developments opening up everywhere. Literally, the first ever Apple store in Detroit just opened downtown, and it is
Let's go.
amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. So all of these new developments is just bringing more attention to the city of Detroit and bringing more people here, which is great. But we still have certain parts of the cities that hasn't, rebounded yet, and they're in the works, but it just hasn't gotten there yet. So if you are thinking to invest in Detroit, I always say don't buy any properties unless you talk to me, but obviously I can't
Hmm.
speak to everybody, or at least listen to me or listen to my podcasts that I've done. But seriously, it's literally location, location, location. Just because the property, a lot of people may think like, oh, this property is $40,000. It's a no brainer at, $1,000 a month in rent or whatever the case may be. But it really could be detrimental in a city like Detroit because there are certain pockets that it's going to take longer to grow, or the kind of tenant that you want just doesn't want to live in that area. So I always say, location, location, location. So the good thing is there's pretty much a good pocket in every zip code in every neighborhood in Detroit. So you just want to make sure you're doing your due diligence and looking at the street view. If you're out of state, I always encourage people to join a local Facebook group, and maybe, hey, can I buy you lunch to I have 5 properties, it'll take you about 45 minutes. Can I send you $50 or buy you lunch to just go past and video these properties? 3 minutes at each property, just taking a video of the outside in the neighborhood if you can't physically do it yourself. But the street view does provide a lot of information as well. So that's number one, what I do. And I eliminate like 90% of the properties quickly, because if it's right next to a property that's boarded up, or there's 5 vacant
Hmm.
lots in a row, just put yourself in the position of your client. If you in my experience, most of my, I would say 95% of my tenants are single mothers, or young families, like between 25 and 35, mother and father, unmarried maybe, but with small kids and just establishing. So that's 90% of my tenant pool. So would a young family or a single mother feel comfortable coming home with the house next door boarded up? Or
Yeah.
would you feel comfortable with your kids playing on the street where there's 5 vacant lots on each side? So, nobody's around to like keep an eye on them and stuff like that. So that's what I always tell people when you're investing in Detroit. Don't get, attached to the small price point and think it's a no-brainer, because even at $40,000, if you're not making any money, or you get someone in there for 1 month and now you have a 12-month eviction, it's still going to be a bad situation. So definitely making sure that we're still picking the right areas, and that's by doing a Google Street View, or physically having somebody ride past and take a video, and thinking, would a mother and a young mother with kids, or single mother with kids, feel safe here, or would a small family feel safe with their kids running around, or even a senior citizen, would they feel safe there?
All right, this is good because now let's get into the areas because I know we talked about this stuff before with you and other guests, but what are the neighborhoods or the pockets, if you will, in Detroit that are quote unquote safer than others that make your property more attractive to sort of the best tenants, that mother or the family that's looking for a safe place for the kids to grow up? What are those areas? Can you share either zip codes or neighborhoods that they should be looking out for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a zip code girl. I feel like that's kind of, the city of Detroit. I don't know, but we always just use zip codes versus neighborhoods. But yeah, so my top zip code for rental, especially Section 8 rentals, I'm talking about, like there's no vacancies every, like you already have people beating down your door to rent the place, is 48235. That's the zip code, 48235. And the reason why is because you can still get properties sub, $100,000 all in, after repair values in that my area is about 150. So if you did a burr, you would get all your money back because it's still a strong value. And it's just the west side of town. It's convenient and everybody loves that area. So I think I have 3 properties in that zip code now. And literally I like there I never have turnovers. And if I do, I already have a tenant lined up before they even move out. Like that's a really high in demand neighborhood.
Wow, I
For
love that. Go ahead,
Yep.
keep on.
So I'm going to give you my top five. So that's a 1 48235, 48221, and then 48228. So those cover like the west side of the city. Those are very high in demand, especially for Section 8 rentals. And then we have on the east side, I like 48224 and then 48205. Now, again, I do want to say, like, don't, obviously, if you want to start, if you're new to out of state investing, you can start there, but please don't discredit some of the other neighborhoods because there are great neighborhoods around the city. Again, just a quick look at the street view, having somebody physically ride past, and you can kind of identify them. But these are the top 5 zip codes that I have the most success in, and it's like a no brainer, for somebody that's out of state that really don't have time to do the research. It's like, hey, go here. But if you have time to do the research, or if your realtor send you a listing, I still encourage you to look at it and analyze it because there's some great opportunities still here in Detroit.
Yeah, and I love that you kind of gave those neighborhoods, but then sometimes people are just like, "Oh, I know the zip code, I know the rent, and now I can just go do the thing."
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe true, but the execution is so important from how
Mhm.
do you manage your property? How do you manage your contractor? So I want to kind of get into that step now with you, Ashley, because
Absolutely.
like you said, there are professional tenants, there are
Hmm.
professional squatters in Detroit. And
Hmm.
some of the biggest issues that we've ever heard about is just people, when you buy a property, someone goes in there and now all of a sudden you can't get them out. So
Hmm.
let's the whole point of this conversation is I want to remove the fear. I want to pull back the curtain a little bit, Ashley, so people don't become afraid of investing out of state, particularly in a market that might have had a bad reputation in the past. But that's clearly not the case if you invest in the right areas with the right team. So, Ashley, when people do get squatters, I'm sure you've dealt with this before. Like, how have you dealt with squatters in your property? What's sort of the best ways to get them out of the property so that you can kind of get back on track?
Absolutely. And then I would say it definitely is 95% of your team. And even though you feel like you're paying this person to do this, they're a local expert, you still, it's not, if you're investing out of state, and I feel like this is in any market, not just Detroit, a struggling market, you have to be, you have to, it can't be completely hands off. You have to be in your business doing some things as well, trust but verify kind of thing. So, that's number one. So I don't want to sound, unrealistic, but I've never really had a squatter in a property unless I just bought it. So number one, a lot of investors, they'll buy a property and then they don't send their property manager over there, or they may take pictures and they're not there, but once a month they go by or something like that. And that's the number one way for squatters, if you already own the property, is just not being there, not showing activity, even if it's once a week. I do things like I have blink cameras. I literally bought a system for like $200 from Amazon. They're all battery powered, and then I pay the extra $50 a month to have Wi-Fi at all of my properties. The goal is
Mm.
always 4 months, though, right? I mean, if it's a tenant turnover, hey, 30 days they're not, But I have a portable Wi-Fi device that I got from my T-Mobile. It's $50 a month, so it's connected to my phone, and I just take it anywhere I want, and I just set the $50 a month wireless Wi-Fi and then my $200 cameras. But by the way, I'm moving this. I'm not buying, cameras for every property.
Ah,
But that's my security system. So if I'm like, because I'm working on 6 projects at most of the time, so I may not be there all the time. So if you are out of state, make sure your property manager asks them, what is your security measures, right? So this, $200 system that I only paid once, but $50 a month, I'm able to have cameras on the property and internet on the property. So even if I wanted to do an alarm system, I could. So that's how I'm, protecting my properties while they're vacant. But other than that, like I said, so as long as you're keeping like the property secure and activity on it, you don't necessarily have to worry about squatters. But if you do get squatters and they have only been there a couple days, and again, that comes with you not going weeks and weeks without being in your property, you can call the police and the police will remove them. If you can prove that, hey, they've been there for 4 days, right? and that's it, or even a week or less. But once I think it hits the 2 week mark, or a little longer, then they establish rights, and then there may be something that you have to do with the court systems. And then that would be my second piece of advice: just having a good eviction attorney on your team, which I do. Obviously I have dealt with evictions in the past, but I have a great relationship with an attorney. And just make sure you do it ahead of time. Like, so if you go to your property and you can't prove that they've been there less than 2 weeks, and the police say you have to physically evict them, no problem. The very next day, go file the eviction papers, or have your attorney file the eviction papers, so that you can just get them out as soon as possible.
Whoa, I love those nuggets. They're so good because uh, I think so many people sometimes they're counting pennies. Like
Yes,
you
yes.
got to think about you're trying to save $250 and not put in
Mhm,
security systems when you could have gotten your HVAC stolen that will cost you
mhm, oh,
5, 10 grand if you're not being careful about it, especially if people are ripping wires out of your house,
mhm,
the messing with your plumbing. You got to have this. And I did not know about that little piece of nugget where you have to make sure they establish residency for X amount of days before they
mhm.
have rights, which makes even more sense of why you need to have a security camera system into place, because now you're sharing with the public that
Yep.
you care. And when someone
Mhm.
sees that, oh, someone cares about this property, maybe they're less likely to go mess with that property because they're not trying to get in trouble either. I mean, they want to be a
The easy.
professional squatter in an
Mhm.
easy situation. That's so good, Ashley. All right. So that covers kind of how do you manage vacancy. How about contractors? How do you find contractors for your properties?
Absolutely. So mostly in Home Depot. I love, like, I mean, I literally have like a system where I'm just looking for contractors all the time. So number one, it's just embedded in my head, and it's such a funny story. So like when you're driving your day to day, kids taking kids to school, going to lunch, going to work or whatever, you're gonna see commercial trucks on the streets. Hey, drywallers, and so I'm just taking pictures of vehicles all day. Like, and obviously I'm being safe, but it's just second nature. Like I'm driving, I'm like, I don't even need I don't even need epoxy flooring, but somebody might need it. So I see a truck, I take a picture of it. And it's so funny because I went to Atlanta and I was with my friends and we were all talking, and I just pulled out my phone and I started taking the pictures. And like, what is going on? I was like, those are builders. I forgot that I was in Atlanta and not even in Detroit. So it's just second nature when I'm out and about, take pictures of trucks. So that's number one. And what I've done was put that on like a spreadsheet, and I kind of have like my Detroit contractor list, and I can go back and pick through them and screen them and make sure. But that's one way. Home Depot, and then also Facebook groups. So there are contractor groups full of contractors, or just real estate RIAs that have Facebook groups that has tons of contractor recommendations. And also, what I love about that is you can kind of see what their experience is if it's in a Facebook group, or some people will provide photos there and say, hey, this is what I did, and they'll list like, this is my designer, this is my stager, this is my contractor. So I'm definitely, looking at those, reaching out to those people and things like that. But me personally, and again, I wanted to give those practical tips because that's what I would do if I was an everyday investor. But I would just say, doing the work and staying in the game, you're gonna get people coming to you. So even now, I'm recently connected with a contractor that I worked with 15 years ago. Well, he did. Well, no, I'm sorry, in 2015, 10 years ago. He did a property with me in 2010, and he did amazing work. And he just took off though. He just couldn't, slow down. Everybody was just calling him. He was in high demand. And things are changing now. A lot of people aren't spending money now, and or buying new properties. People are getting, or maybe they're just preparing for a recession, so it's slowing down. But so he reached out to me. He was like, "Oh, I followed you on Facebook, and I see you're still doing this, and can I help you?" And in the last 30 days, we've completed one property, and we're 90% finished with another property, just off of that. So that was really good for me. And then also, like, people are reaching out on Instagram, "Hey, I do this. Hey, I do that." But that's because obviously I'm a public figure and things like that. So I get people reaching out to me and referrals. But if I was new, I would definitely, when I'm at Home Depot, look for the people that are in the drywall aisle and just ask for their card. I would take photos of trucks as long as it's safe out in my daily business. And then also I would join a Facebook group and you start networking. And when you see people doing before and afters, hey, who was your contractor on that? You know, so those are a couple
Yeah,
good
that's
tips.
so good. Especially when you talk to other investors that are doing deals, that are doing rehabs, and you see
Mhm.
that they did a good job. You might
Yes.
reach out to them like, "Hey, I really love that job that you did. Like, by any chance, do you mind who tell me who
Yeah.
did that project for you? It's simple as that.
Absolutely.
But
Hmm.
sometimes I think as a new investor, try to give a little bit. Like what I try to do is like if I ever try to approach someone and ask them for a referral, I would say like, hey, look, I got this great Rolodex of like an HVAC guy, of a pest guy. Hey, can I share those with you? And when you offer to share first, someone might be more willing to share back with you, especially if you need a plumber and you don't have a great plumber yet, right? For
Yes.
that renovation. It's little things that you can do right now, especially to build your reputation as a giver in
Hmm.
your market, in your local area, wherever that might be, because that helps build your reputation. Because who knows, your good HVAC guy might now, right now, he might go out of business in like 5 years,
Hmm.
10 years because of bad cash flow, right?
Yeah.
Who knows? You're going to need a deep Rolodex. And that's why,
Yes.
especially if you can work with someone like Ashley, you get
Hmm.
access to the deep, extensive contractor network and
Hmm.
understand how working with someone that has that experience that would compress your learning time so much, and you get to
Hmm.
avoid all those mistakes that Ashley might have made with other contractors that might have tried to rip her off or walked off jobs or
Hmm.
didn't show up or didn't do a good job. You got to compress that. That's so invaluable because I think not only do you save on cost, on time, but sometimes people forget about how much their energy means to them.
Yes. Yes.
When you are trying to solve these gritty problems, but you could have been in a position where you never had to deal with that. Like trying to
Absolutely.
chase a contractor to show up on time. You don't want to do that. You want to
Mm-mm.
work with people that just does what they say they're going to do. So that's why I love how Ashley talked about one, learning how to expand your network. I mean, obviously Ashley's a different level now because now she's attracting contractors into her network. But that's not to say is that something that you can do right now with just research. Because guess what? When it slows down, the
Mhm.
best contractors, they might have a little bit more time. And this is
Mhm.
the time to build that network.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. This is definitely the time. I'm finding so many qualified contractors that normally would not be available, and to the point where I'm even asking them, "Well, what's going on? Like, what happened to your normal clients and everything like that?" And they're like, "Oh, they're not buying right now, or oh, they moved out of state, or such and such like that." So, just wanting to know so I can have a gauge on the market and things like that. But super grateful, and it is. And as a real estate investor, number one, you don't have to go out and be a licensed builder, like me, but you do need to have some kind of knowledge. So making sure that you're showing up to your properties or just asking questions in the beginning and retaining this information so that on your next project you can lead, them and things like that. Because like even for the contractors, like, I love them, they work good together, but it's still my puzzle. They're just putting it together. Versus I feel like a lot of investors, they just like, hey, I need this renovated and just depend on the contractor's knowledge. But we always have to remember in this game, in the real estate, there's multiple levels of knowledge. So my contractors are great contractors, but they don't realize that when they use the standard screws that come in the doorknobs, that my Section 8 tenants are going to break off the door and I'm going to have to go over there every
Mm.
month and change the doorknobs. But when I tell them, hey, use two-inch screws in the doorknobs, don't use the ones that come with it because that's going to give us a stronger product. They don't know that. Or hey, we changed the kitchen around, and so they're like, okay, great, let's install the cabinets. But we have to also move the light switch because we moved the door in the kitchen. A lot of times I'll do that, close the door off so I can get an L-shaped kitchen now. Because a lot of kitchens in Detroit have two doors, like two entries. So I've been closing those doors off. So now my kitchen wraps around versus having two voids where the doors are. But you have to move the light switch because the light switch is always by the door. But the contractor isn't thinking that because they don't think about, not even that they don't think about it, they don't know the experiences that the tenant have once they're in the place. But me as a property manager, right, as a landlord, I'm the one that's getting these calls. Oh, the doorknob falls off every week. Oh, the blinds are falling off. So now I was able to say, okay, great. Next time we install blinds, we're going to use 2-inch drywall screws versus the standard 1 inch. Next time we install doorknobs, we're not going to use the standard screws that come with them. We're going to use these 2 inches because it keeps it on longer. And just things like that, like granite countertops. Obviously, I spent about $800 more than I would want a standard Formica countertop. Like if I just went to Home Depot and bought a countertop versus granite, I'll spend probably $800 to $1,000 more. But I don't have to worry about the formica pilling. And every time I have a tenant turnover, having to replace this. This granite is like locked in place for 10 or 15 years, and I'm getting a higher quality tenant. So, it's good on durability. I don't have to change it out every tenant turnover. But the tenant is like, wow, granite countertops. I've never had that before. I'm gonna make sure I pay my rent and do my inspections because I don't want to lose this place. Because nobody in my family has granite countertops, right? Every time people comes over here, they're like, oh my God, your house is so nice. And it kind of makes them want to stay there longer and appreciate the property. So it just all trickles down.
Oh, I love that statement of I don't want to lose this place because that's the
Yeah.
level of standard that everybody should be aspiring to. You got to
Yes.
raise your standards so that you can attract those tenants that says, I don't want to lose this place. That's such a strong statement. How do you think you keep your vacancy expenses lower? It's by someone not wanting to leave. It's
Leave.
simple as that. And
Yes.
that's from you providing a great experience. And I don't want to miss this point. I want to extra highlight this one. Sharing with your contractors what you need to do that's specific to your strategy is so important. I can't tell you how many times people have like told contractors and said,
Mhm.
"Oh, can you help me just redo the kitchen?" It's so vague. It's so
Yes.
broad. What are they supposed to know? How would they know to put in an L-shaped kitchen and move
Mhm.
the light switch to take advantage of the space that's already
Yes.
there? I mean, come on. You got to take the extra step, just like how Ashley provides the extra dignity with the LED light up faucets, with
Yes.
the mirror and the vanity. I mean, that's
Mhm.
what takes it to the next level. That's what gets that experience that you're looking for. So, Ashley, I know we covered a ton about Section 8 now. The last question I asked about Section 8 is like, what has been your experience getting rent increases? Obviously, you have been able to update your home, get additional bedrooms, but nowadays there's a big fear about not being able to get any rental increases in the future, especially with what's happening with the federal government. What's sort of your experience specifically in Detroit with your housing authorities?
Right. So absolutely. So again, I look at this as an ecosystem where everybody wins again. So I know, big gurus, or if you do research, they're telling you to increase the rent, even if it's like 20 bucks a year, there's a certain percentage. And to me, honestly, my goal is to have my tenants in the place for at least 3 years. So I'm not even looking at rental increases for 3 years. But because I'm doing the granite countertops, I'm doing the LED faucet, these people got to have this place and they don't want to leave. I can start off at the max rent amount. So for again, it's not like, okay, a standard 4 bedroom is $1,800 a month, but I'm going to rent it at 1,600 because I want to do $50 increases every year. No, I'm going to just find the tenant that can pay the $1,800 a month, and now I don't have to worry about it. And then also, I'm not going to say everybody, it's a part of life if you live in apartments. But if you did a poll of the tenants and their biggest gripes on their apartment building, especially apartments or multifamily, because those really like have it every year, it doesn't matter. Like they'll lease out a 2 bedroom for $1,000, but you've been there 5 years and your rent is $1,200, because it's like every year it's a built-in increase. Versus, and it's like, I've been here 5 years, I should have a cheaper rent than a person that just started because I'm loyal. But that's not the model that's going on. They're like, hey, we're going to do these rent increases. So for me, I know that, again, I want my tenant to feel like I'm not just a big box landlord, that I'm in this with them. So if I can start off at the max rent, yeah, it'll be hard for more people to qualify. But once they're in there, I don't have to worry about rent increases for at least 3 years. So that's typically, my goal. And again, it hones in our relationships. It makes my tenant, respect and appreciate me more because they know, like, hey, in my last apartment, I don't care if it was $5 a month. Every year, my rent went up. But I've been here 3 years. I got granite countertops. Everybody loves my place, and my rent hasn't even increased. Right. So that's what I always try to do. I try to start at the maximum amount of rent so that I don't have to do an increase for a couple of years. But other than that, I would just say, because it's all an algorithm and a numbers game with Section 8. So I think that they have a cap of 40% of their income. So even if let's say your property, you rented it for 1,500 and market rents are 1,800. If that tenant can't qualify for that $1,800 rent increase, even though it's warranted, you would have to evict that tenant and start over. And again, even though, yeah, you can get an extra $50, $100 a month in rent, but to have wait for them to vacate and then do a tenant turnover and have to release it, it's not worth it. I
Yeah.
understand you're losing a couple dollars or a year in cash flow, but it's not worth the headache. So that would be, my advice is by, starting high. Like I said, a lot of people may not qualify, but at least you can lock in that rent for 3 years and you don't have to worry about rent increases and things like that.
Oh, that is so smart. That is such a big mindset shift. Oh, I love that one. All right, I hope people rewind that piece and just listen to that one over and over because I think it's very uncommon type of practical tips that you just don't hear about quite often. And Ashley, I know you've kind of gone into the Airbnb space a little bit too. You kind of diversifying your portfolio. Why did you start doing Airbnbs, and what areas are even good for Airbnbs in Detroit? It just you don't think about that as an Airbnb market.
Absolutely. So again, and I feel like that's the theme of this show and just my life in general. Like, I look at the numbers, they're very important, but I just do it and see what happens, right? So to be honest, because I, became experienced in the industry and I've done so many rehabs, I started to buy properties in a little nicer areas, but only not only that, I started to over renovate my properties, right? Which I don't recommend, especially if you're new, like over improve them. So like I'm in love with the LED mirrors and the granite and spray foam installation. So that's what happened to my first property. I ended up over improving it. And I would have been happy, but market rent was about 1,500 a month. I would have been happy with that, but I knew I wanted like 2,500 a month because it was worth it and the improvement. So I said, hey, let me try to give Airbnb a shot. This was 2023, like May of 2023. Well, I that unit, and it was just a standard. It was a standard rental, so it wasn't in a specific neighborhood. It's actually a couple houses from a school. Um, not really close to downtown, not close to a hospital or anything like that. It was just a rental that I over improved and said, hey, let me try it out. And that rental has consistently grossed over $5,000 a month ever since 2023. And again, market rent at the time was 1,500, even now, probably 2,000.
Wow, 5,000 a month. What do you net on that after like taxes, maintenance, cleaning, and everything?
Absolutely. So I still use the 50% rule. And then I also
Mm.
just pay so I commercial lease. I have this crazy strategy. So I run the Airbnb and then but I commercial lease it for myself. So to my accountant or everybody else, it still looks like a rental. It's just a commercial lease. And then now I have another stream of revenue from the Airbnb. So all of my Airbnbs pay my commercial lease company $2,500 a month. So everything else is, profit or goes to taxes and stuff like that. So after I collected $2,500 a month, I still have about $500 in profit. So for my Airbnb business, and that's like after cleaning, taxes, expenses, and all that stuff. So I would say on $5,000 a month is probably about $3,000 gross. Because that's just what it is. So every property, I'm going to pay the commercial lease fee, and then whatever else I divide it up into expenses, and then have a profit, in the Airbnb business.
Oh, I want to make sure I heard that correctly. So
Yeah.
$5,000, you lease it to yourself for 2,500, but then you also make $500 of profit on the Airbnb side. So that's how you got to the $3,000 net, quote unquote,
Yeah,
right, for the
absolutely.
property.
Yep. So we
Got
make
it.
$5,000 for the month. 2,500 goes to my commercial lease. So that business is still, booming and stuff like that. And that looks good on my taxes. And then the other $2,500, I'll use that for the expenses, the cleaners, and all that fee. And it typically is about $500 left from that. So I'm technically profiting $3,000 a month, but 25 of that is going to my leasing, my property management business, and then the other 500 a month is going to my Airbnb business. And the reason I do that is so that I can have two businesses that have revenue so I can qualify for business loans and use those to expand the businesses. You see
Ah.
what I'm saying? Because obviously everybody's talking about, oh, you can get business credit, hard money loans, or HELOCs, but you can't do that if you're not making any income. So now my commercial lease business is making $2,500 a month times five properties. So they're booming over there with very low expenses because all they're doing is leasing the property to the commercial. And then now my commercial business is bringing in 2,500 a month, but only 500 of profit. But if you multiply that by five, that's still 40 grand a year that I can qualify for at least 10 or $15,000 on a business credit card, and then I can use that credit card to buy furnishings and set up my new Airbnbs and vice versa. So I know that's a lot, going over there, but in order to get business credit, because I know everybody's talking about it, and HELOC loans and even SBA funding, you have to have revenue, right? So instead of me having one big company that's making $3,000 a month times five Airbnb properties, you see what I'm saying? So that would be $15,000 a month in this commercial lease business. that would be great, but I wouldn't be able to get any other funding and I'll be capped out there. Now, instead of making, all that, the $5,000, now it's only making 2,500. It's still, it's still a great income, but now it's allowing me to get funding on this business as well. So again, I know that was a strategy, a high strategy, and you guys can always reach out to me and Kent to dive into it. But that's how I'm spreading the income so that I can be a more desirable candidate for loans. And then also just diversifying, right? I wouldn't want all of my loans and debt under this one commercial lease property, so now I have loans on the Airbnb business and loans on the commercial lease business, and they're still, able to do good and be separate, but it's still the same property. Sorry, I hope I said that right.
Yo, that is perfect. That's literally the information that people need to understand, because not only is it about one, building up your rental portfolio, generating cash flow, but it's also how do you expand your access to capital? I mean,
Yes.
sometimes one of your biggest constraints for growth is your
Hmm.
access to capital, your ability to raise money, whether that's through private
Yeah.
equity investors or through getting access to cheaper debt or access to debt in general so that you can continue expanding your portfolio. So I love that you are so smart in your structuring, because you not only just thought about how do I maximize my rental, but also with the same move, quote unquote, killing two birds with one stone, you're also expanding your access to capital. Such
Yeah.
genius move here, Ashley. I freaking
Thank
love
you.
that. And
And what I would say is, so it's actually three streams of income for one Airbnb. So
mm,
I guess that's how I should have said it anyway. So I have a commercial lease company that just gets the rents every month. That's it. The rents, the commercial lease. And then I have the Airbnb, the profits from the Airbnb, but I also pay my property management company 10% to manage it. And all we do is hire,
yes.
manage the cleaners and, and go pick up the stock items, so it's 10%. So again, if it's 5 grand a month, it's $500 a month, for that. So it's really possible to feed multiple business with one income source. And now again, I can get funding on the property management side. I can get funding on the Airbnb profit side. I can get funding on the commercial lease side. So, and then that's what I just wanted to piggyback to, because in May, I started my first Airbnb in 2023, like we discussed, May. So it was already the end of the year, and it kind of like stumbled across it where I just turned to regular rental property. But fast forward today, it's 2025, so just over 2 years now. I have 6 Airbnb properties, and I show this every single month. I'm generating minimum $20,000 to $22,000 a month. 22,000 was my highest grosses month, which was August. And this is
Wow.
after like all Airbnb fees. So the $22,000 a month, only thing that comes out of that is the cleaner fee. And again, if you have 5 properties, you're negotiating better rates with your cleaners. Obviously, we're still paying them what they're worth, and I give them gift cards for their birthdays and stuff like that. So we're still paying them what they're worth, but we're not paying as much as if I had to hire, if I only had one property, right? Because it's that job security asset. And I really have adapted that and realizing like the value that I provide to cleaners and contractors, right? Because before I always thought the contract, if I can't survive without a contractor renovating my house, I can't survive my Airbnb business without a cleaner. That is true. But now I'm not just a one time investor. So I'm not going to give you one house a year. I have the potential to give you 20 houses a year. So because of that, I'm going to negotiate where you're still making money. But let's say you were charge a standard person 15 grand for the renovation. Hey, I'll pay you 12 grand. Yeah, you're losing 3,000 if you think of it that way, but you have 5 properties with me. Here's the addresses, and I'm ready to go as quick as you. So it's a negotiation tool. And just like that with the cleaners, yeah, let's say the average rate is $200 here, but I'm able to pay 150 because I have not 5 properties. But not only that, like I can keep you working where you don't have to go out and find other properties, or a lot of hosts are dropping out, so you don't have to worry about that job security. With Ashley, hey, I got 4 cleanings a month solid, and then now they can kind of estimate their income, if that makes sense.
Oh, this is so good. I love that, because now you're incentivizing the best performers, the A talent, to remain with your team. And that's how you
Absolutely.
form freaking the Avengers of investing in Detroit right here. This is so freaking cool.
I love
And
that.
right? That's exactly what you're
Avengers.
doing. And actually, so what are the markets or neighborhoods that we talked about Section 8, the best zip codes, right? What
Mhm.
are the markets or zip codes that are best for Airbnbs now that you've been doing it for like 2 years? in Detroit?
Absolutely. So I love to drop value. So I will give you some zip codes. But to be honest, I just stumbled across these. These were just regular rentals. They're not in like, oh, close to a hospital, close to a lake, close to downtown, close to the airport. Like I wish I can tell you that, but they're not. They're just in normal areas. Recently, so before I always had like my single family rentals that I turned into Airbnbs, but I recently converted a duplex into an Airbnb. So it's like two bedrooms each unit, and that one is outperforming like crazy. So that's the zip code 48236. So it is close to a hospital. So I did notice that. I have had traveling nurses stay there, but again, I've only had this one up since May, so about 3 months. It's been a traveling nurses, but a lot of contractors. A lot of contractors that are out of state and here for
Oh,
work. People are building like Chase Bank. They were building a new one. My guy stayed there for 3 weeks. DTE contractors, like people that are helping the energy grid. So this is like a sweet spot. Obviously, I'm charging less, but this neighborhood, like just the feedback that I'm getting from the neighborhood, they love it. It's walkable. So that's 48236. I have two Airbnbs in the 48221, which was also the rental zip code that I gave you as well. Like that, I'm telling you, 48221 is probably the most popular zip code in Detroit. It's a neighborhood called Bagley. And I mean, because you can flip in there, you can rent there, like you can flip and make $100,000 profit in that 48221 zip code. You can rent there and cash flow $500 a month. And you can also run an Airbnb, and just people love that area, and generate 5 grand a month, because that's where two of mines are at. So I gave you 48236. That's the duplex. It's close to a hospital. That's doing really good, but there's single family in that area. 48221 for sure is a great area. And then again, I have two and a zip code 48202. Now this one is more historic homes, bigger homes. So I would say I'm normally all in about 200 to 300,000 on those homes. And again, it's a science to it, right? So when you're doing a regular rental, you have to make profit, and the way you make profit is with your minus your mortgage payment, for example. So if I have a $300,000 mortgage, though, my payment now is 1,900, right? Because I have taxes, insurance, and servicing the debt on 300,000, even at 5% interest rate. So but the rents in that area is only 2 grand. So that wouldn't make sense if I can get 2 grand in rent, or I can get 2 grand in rent, but my expenses are 1,900. So I had turned it to an Airbnb, and that one's generating around 7 grand a month. So now I'm able to, have a $300,000 house that's helping my portfolio. Right now I can say I have a 4.4 or $5 million portfolio, because I'm able to hold this $300,000 house, but I'm not scared of the nuances of not being able to pay rent or not cash flowing, because the rents in the area isn't low. I just turned it to an Airbnb, and now instead of getting 1,900, I'm getting 7,000 a month. So that's kind of the reverse flip. I know I had talked about that, like I was doing
yes.
reverse flips a couple years ago. So that was the solution to the exit strategy to the reverse flip, because again, I have attachment issues. I'm a Leo, so I hate to sell properties, and I just see the value in owning, right, and the residual. So just for example, really quick on that property, it was 300, it appraised at 300,000. I was all in 180 something thousand dollars, right? So I could have sold the property, and after commissions and things like that, I could have netted about 80 grand, right, on the sale of that property, because you got 6% commissions. And then I'm thinking of the 80 grand profit, but I'm not thinking about the capital gains tax that I have to pay at the end of the year. So essentially, that $80,000 profit that I would have made as a flipper would have turned into 50,000 or less, depending on how good I was with taxes after I paid the capital gains tax, right? So instead of selling the property, I refinanced it, because hey, I still bought it for 182. I'm still all in for 182. It's still worth 300,000. The only difference is I can't sell it and make the 80,000. I'm going to grab my calculator, but I'm going to get 75%, of that. So I just wanted to see, because I think with that property, I did still do better than a traditional sale. But sorry about that, really quickly. Yeah, so at 70, okay, again, because I just want to make it, sound good. So again, at three, I was all in 182, and the appraised value was 300,000. If I sold that after you pay commissions and all expenses and all that stuff, and I would have netted 80,000. And then at the end of the year, when I filed my taxes, there would be a capital gain, because I didn't own it that
Hmm.
long, and it's between 30 and 40%. So that 80,000 of profit would have really turned into about $50,000 gross, right? So that would have been that situation. But a reverse flip where I just refinanced the property, it still was worth the 300,000. I still was all in 182, but I cashed out $225,000. But guess what?
Mhm.
Tax free, no capital gain. So I still got all my money back plus the $4,000. But the added benefit is the monthly cash flow to that. Now, again, most investors wouldn't see that because they were like, well, Ashley, market rents are 1900. My payment mortgage principal and interest is 1900. It would make sense. So I have to sell it. No, you can Airbnb it. You can turn it into an insurance rental and charge more rent. You don't necessarily have to sell it. So that was my strategy in the 48202 market because it is a higher market considering the normal $100,000 rentals that we're doing. But I still wanted to have high class properties in my portfolio to get the net worth and the equity boost. But I still need to cash flow. Like I can't buy a deal that don't cash flow. So that was my solution in a nutshell.
Oh, this is so good. What a master class of investing in Detroit, not only on a Section 8 side, but also on the Airbnb side. Because now you truly got a diversified portfolio. You've started buying in nicer areas, higher priced homes that has helped you generate tremendous amount of net worth, especially in the market value of your portfolio.
Yes.
This is so good. I mean, I can't wait to kind of have you back on the podcast, Ashley. I know we're coming up to time, and I kind of want to ask you this question again. This is a question I ask everybody whenever they come back on the podcast. And just for folks that don't know the genesis behind this question, is that
Mhm.
when I started this podcast 3.5 years ago, wow, almost 4 years ago,
Wow.
people have always said, Kent, you're never going to solve this affordable housing problem. And the first month when I released this podcast, I had like 17 views, Ashley. I'm pretty sure it was just like my mom that was clicking on it, supporting me, and she barely speaks English, right? But fast forward, I mean, we've had over like 400,000 people that listen to the podcast.
That's
And
amazing.
I viewed you as such a big piece of that puzzle to solving the problem for affordable housing because it kept telling me, you're never going to solve it. And Ashley, I'm just so grateful for you coming onto the podcast, sharing all these nuggets, all these gems with so many people because honestly, without people like you, I would have never had the home I grew up in.
Right, thank you.
So I appreciate you so much. But actually, the question is, why do you think affordable housing, particularly the lack of supply of affordable housing, has just been so hard to solve for?
Yeah, I think it's because a lot of it is because the media attention around it and the scrutiny, like you said, the negative notions to it, or like, hey, they're gonna tear up your house and things like that. But I feel like it's you as a person. Like you have there have to be people like me and like you, and also podcasts like this to spread a positive real life view. Because even Detroit. Like I'll have people say, "Don't ever buy in Detroit." It's a war zone there. And then when you ask them how many homes do you own in Detroit, they don't own any. So there's so many people that feel comfortable speaking negatively about something that can possibly deter someone that's passionate about it, and they don't even know it. So it's like, who are we getting our information to? So number one, I feel like that's the reason why it's just been too much bad information out there. But I feel like it is changing, especially because number one, podcasts like these, because now you have a real life experience on somebody that's doing it every single day and that's doing it successfully. But again, where it boils down to the dignity, and that's with any business. If I was going to sell fruit on the street, like if my fruit has flies on it and black mold
Right.
marks, it's not going to do good. So if I'm going to rent out Section 8 properties and just throw in basic materials and just paint not matching, and just throw on the cheapest light bulbs doorknobs I can find, and don't replace anything, just keep painting and reusing it, then of course I'm going to get those bad seeds. But if I pick the freshest fruit and I make sure that it's no flies around it and it's not molded, or I pick the best property, or even if it's the best property in a not so good neighborhood, but I just put that extra dignity and that extra in it to make it stand out, I'm going to attack good people, and then I will be successful. So it's really the same as anything. If you want, because people go in it for the money potential, but they don't go in it for the heart and things like that. And that's kind of what we spoke about. So I feel like that has been the case for a while, but with this podcast and so many people talking positively about it and interviews like this, I feel like that will change. I feel like once when we come back on in a year or two, the stigma may have lowered a little bit because people are going to be able to do it successfully. But you just have to be invested in it and not just follow trends. You have to literally see like what's really going on, and instead of always trying to evict people, or hey, I'm the big bad landlord, I can do this, let's get inside of there and figure out like what's going on, and help them out, because a lot of people do need help in this situation.
That is so good. That was so heart touching, Ashley. I'm so glad you hit on the heart. It's really that's what it comes down to. When you let your business ventures be guided by the right intentions, the right heart, and the desire to help people, that's what's going to help you push through when the obstacles get hard, when the things come up and it drains your energy, and you're going to be asking yourself, why am I doing this? And if you just are able to reflect back to the people, the families that you're able to help and put into one of these homes and change the lives of those kids, that's what it all comes down to. Ashley, this has been such an amazing conversation. I this is like an all-time favorite, hands down. I mean, actually, for people that want to learn more from you, they want to reach out to you. Where can they find you?
I always tell people the best place to find me is on Instagram at Detroit underscore investor. I do have a blue check, so it's very easy to find me. And I literally show this stuff every single day. And if you click the link in my bio, I do have, solutions to help you out with action plans if you want to book a one-on-one call with me, or just guides and things on how to do this stuff.
All right. This has been an amazing conversation. If you guys would please support this podcast by leaving a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, especially if you listen to this episode with Ashley, please, this is the only way we can keep getting discovered in a world where ChatGPT is taking over the world, where you're going to get real life, practical information from people like Ashley, not some generic quoted answer on ChatGPT. All right. This is where you want to get this information from about all things related to affordable housing, because we only give the best advice, the most practical tips, and bring on amazing people just like Ashley. So, Ashley, thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you, Ken. As you always know, I look up to you. We have a great relationship off screen, and I appreciate our friendship. So, anything I can do to help, and just want to also piggyback on you. This podcast is amazing, guys. Make sure you give it a 5-star review. I love this podcast.
All right. And we